Mother-in-law invades privacy twice. Me 29 female, and Hubs 34 male, been together for over 3 years. We live 45 minutes away from just no mother-in-law, and she's always been good at stomping boundaries and sticking her nose into our business. She thinks it's okay to show up at our door anytime she wants, and stay at our house for as long as she wants. Husband didn't see any issues with his mom showing up every time, and trying to get involved in even the smallest things and end up having her way. She's been staying with us for over a month now, and here's the thing: she thinks can invite people to our house like it's her house, uses our own Wi-Fi for her group chat, then refuses to help pay the bills. Redo the dishes once I'm done with them, saying she wasn't sure they were clean. Reorganized everything in the house, kicks my dog out every single time, and she only does it when their husband isn't around. Trash talks, criticizes my family and my household routine, claiming she was the expert. Ruined our living room hardwood floor by using bleach. Leave electronic devices on. Wanting to hang pictures on our wall. Honestly, I can go on for hours about the property damage she's already caused. Now, the huge invasion of privacy. Whenever DH and AMP I are having a private conversation at home, she'd walk in and try to take part. Randomly walks into our bedroom saying she was looking for X object. She walked in on her husband and AMP I while we were being intimate, not once but twice. She did it again at 6 AM. Walked in and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you'd be awake by now." Gosh, I was so embarrassed, and she didn't even properly apologize. Then I overheard her awful comment when she noticed he was upset. She said, "What's wrong? I thought you had fun last night." Well, I guess my family name do disappoint. I walked in and asked if she did say something about my family. She lied and said, "Yeah, I was wondering if we could call and ask them to join us tomorrow." She's already made plans for 4th of July and invited her daughter's sister-in-law, who I have not been on good terms with. In fact, I put her on NC and JNMIL wants to invite her to my own house. I was so angry. I've talked to DH. Obviously I was not happy with her invading my privacy and accidentally walking into our bedroom looking for something she might have lost. And trashing talking about my family. He told me he'd talk to her and explain how uncomfortable she is making me feel. When he talked to her this evening, she started throwing a fit, saying it was her son's house and she has the right to visit whenever, and that she didn't think she was invading anyone's privacy or damaging any property, and that I simply can't just tell her to leave just cause I don't feel comfortable with her around. She said that was my problem, not hers, and that she was glad I've shown her who I truly was. She went into the kitchen, made dinner for herself only, then went upstairs. Edit. The reason she is staying with us is that she wanted to celebrate 4th of July with us, and said we might not show up, and decide to visit my family instead. So she is here to make sure my husband spends 4th of July with her. Fun highlights from my relationship with Mel. Long back post. I've posted a couple times about recent issues with my mostly back mother-in-law to be. I thought I would share some highlights of weird and annoying things she has done in the past 5 years that I've known her, to add some color to her character if I decide to post most stories. Dining fun has literally whistled at a waiter like a dog to bring more plates to our table at a buffet place, meaning the plates are on the buffet line. The entire restaurant stopped talking and looked at her because it was so incredibly rude and lazy, since again, plates were accessible to those who wanted to stand up and grab one. Applebee's is her favorite restaurant. For 2 people, I went out to lunch with her once to address boundaries she had crossed. We spent $60 for lunch. My contribution was a $7 salad and soup lunch and a water. We've also spent $120 as a group of 4, with over half of the tab being hers. Literally sucks the sauce condiment off of her food and redips it. I will not watch her eat anymore after I saw her do this with butter and lobster. Weird jealousy of my parents. After any event hosted by my parents, she has to copy the event and make it her thing at her next party. My parents played Family Feud at Thanksgiving. She bought it the next day to use the next time we went to her house. We played Pictionary once at a gathering. Now she does it at every gathering. My mom has a travel room because she travels a lot and has a shelf for each place she goes with souvenirs and tchotchkes from there. After seeing it, my mill decided to transform her country-style home to a travel theme, despite having taken 3 continental US vacations that weren't moving homes or visiting family in the past 25 years. My mom threw a lovely baby shower for me with the help of my sil and my grandma. When my mill heard about it, she insisted on helping to me, and I told her that sounds great, and to contact my mom about what she needs since she would be throwing it. Instead of contacting my mom, she completely ignored it until it was time to show up. From her usual MO, she probably was expecting my mom to beg her for help, then proceeded to spend most of the party crying and telling everyone who would listen how we were intentionally excluding her and my fiance's sister because my family had crew shirts because they were the party crew and could answer any questions like where the bathroom was, and we did it to hurt her. The next day, I asked her if we had hurt her feelings since multiple people had told me she was crying and bad-mouthing me, and she lied to my face about having a reaction to her medication. I've already mentioned in past posts, but she throws a temper tantrum at the thought of my parents seeing my son at all, despite putting in no effort herself to see us, call us, plan holidays or get-togethers, or be part of her lives. Most get-togethers are planned by me, unless it is a party with all of her friends that we are invited to and promptly ignored at. Her dogs, she has 6 French bulldogs that she refers to as my fiance's siblings. They are aggressive and not trained, but she constantly brags about how well they are behaved, because they will sit on the couch for the first 5 minutes of dinner, before they wander off and beg, and they are constantly fighting with each other. She has full mattresses for them in several rooms of the house, as well as a designated bedroom for them filled with French bulldog memorabilia. Half of the room is used pee pads. She will not leave the dogs alone for more than a few hours. One of her dogs will chew drywall, which she uses as an excuse to never stay at anything we host for more than 2-3 hours. She will not crate the dogs or otherwise make the drywall inaccessible to biting, or train them. Speaking of not crating the dogs, at one of her Halloween parties, she literally had one of the dogs that was on their period roaming around non-diapered at the party, because she felt too bad about leaving her in the other room. The dog sat on my sil's lap, my brother's wife, not her daughter, who was wearing a white costume, and got period blood on it because my mill did not warn the guests about her free bleeding dog. Her parties, she typically throws 2-4 parties a year for her friends, and my family usually attends. She does her best to not acknowledge them, despite them being the most friendly and social people at the party. At these parties, nobody is allowed to eat until every person has arrived. Note, they are not dinner parties, they are. Food is in the kitchen and everyone is walking around the house with a plate. Parties. Even when people tell her they will be late and to please start eating, she will not even finish preparing the food until everyone is there, meaning food sometimes does not get served until 8 or 9 o'clock. For a 4th of July party, they set off fireworks and literally burned one of their party guests with them. Neither her or my Phil made any motion to get first aid for him or help him. They just continued setting off fireworks while another party guest got a first aid kit from their car, and me and my fiance were herding their 4 terrified children to the car, who were crying and now afraid of the fireworks because their dad got hurt. She gender segregates activities. At her Christmas parties, only the ladies are allowed to participate in a white elephant game, or gingerbread house decorating, while the men play Wii bowling in the basement and drink beer. My dad and fiance wanted to participate in the game, and she made several comments mocking my dad about how he needs a bra now, and he isn't allowed to play in front of half of her guests. Living with my fiance, when he moved into my place, it was a 2-bedroom, and I just had a bad experience with a roommate who moved out. We decided to keep my bedroom set as is, leave my bed and things in there, so we had a backup room if we needed space, but agreed we would primarily share the room he was moving into. She made a huge stink about how, are you even dating if you are in separate rooms, and continued to insinuate that we were just friends. The kicker is that her and Phil have had completely separate rooms for most of their marriage. We hosted a Christmas Eve party at our house one year. Our room was a mess, and I closed it off and told nobody to go in there for any reason. I showed everyone when they walked in where to put their coats and shoes. She proceeded to ask my mom, who told her where to put her stuff, then my fiance, who told her where to put her stuff, if she should use our room, was told no both times. Then slogged through our 6-inch high barrier of stuff to dump her purse and coat on our bed. Sex toys were out and the room was a mess. When I saw her go in there midway through the evening, I had a mini panic attack and asked her to please not go in my room. She berated me about saying it was my room, left the room, didn't grab her things, then yelled at me across the room 3 more times that evening to grab my purse since apparently I'm not allowed in there, then her coat, then her wallet. As if I wasn't hosting a large gathering at the time. Bonus fun outing. She buys things at auctions to sell on eBay. Mostly antique toys, and Christmas decorations, and things I have no idea how she is making money on, but it's not my business. I went to an auction with her, and she told me such gems as if I want something, I get it, I don't care how much it costs, which makes no sense to me if the point is reselling, but sure. She bought almost the entire estate of weird knickknacks and dishes. I had a few other people ask for some specific items, since you could only buy things in large lots, and she would buy the entire lot for like $1 and want one item and plan on trashing the rest. Some older lady came up and asked me if she could please buy a teapot that my mill had already told me she didn't want and got for probably around 14 cents. Mill told her she could wait until the auction was over to negotiate a price. It was also discovered toward the end of the auction that the family of the deceased was present, trying to bid on their childhood memories and old Christmas decorations, which my mill did her best to jack up the price on. Literally $200 for an old Christmas decoration you could buy new for $40. She was livid that these people bid her up so much. When she found out the situation, she made a huge deal about how gracious she was for letting them have it, and how she was called by God to stop bidding and it was her good deed of the day, as if she wasn't about 10 seconds away from a temper tantrum literally a minute earlier. I asked her if she wanted to let the family look through some of things she had bought. She bought almost everything. She literally screamed across the room at a crying woman to tell her she could have the junk she didn't want. To prevent this post from getting too long, I'll end here, but she is definitely one of the most interesting people I have had the pleasure to get to know for sure. Religious nut future mother-in-law is convinced it would be doing the devil's work if me and future husband were to adopt. So I've never posted her before, but recently found this sub and feel like this might be the perfect place to come for advice on the batshit crazy situation surrounding my fiancé and his mother. I, 26 female, have been with my FH, 28 male, for 4 years, since we met in university. I've basically been responsible for pulling him away from his mother's weird religious beliefs he was raised with, which is some spin on Christian theology that seems to be uniquely of her own devising. My future husband is one of the most genuinely kind and intelligent people I know, but he still struggles not to buy into a lot of what she says, even though he accepts a good portion of it as crazy. We've been talking for some time about having children, and I've made it clear I don't want to give birth due to close family trauma, and want only to adopt. He is on generally bored with this, but FML? Totally different story. She's absolutely convinced that adoption is evil, that it's stealing children from receiving God's grace. They only receive God's grace if both birth parents raise them apparently. And away that lesser demons, a term she uses referring people who have apparently served as a vessel for Satan's possession for a long time and been totally corrupted by it, try to limit how many children are embraced by God. I feel like I'm in a tug of war, my FMIL on the other end and my FH in the middle, trying to drag him into thinking reasonably while she tries to pull him further into insanity. He and his siblings visit her every Monday for dinner, or as I like to call it, a catered sermon, where she will speak, essentially uninterrupted, for at least an hour about the eternal battle between God and Satan, and their role as a family in fighting against evil in whatever form she's decided it takes that week. I've been there with him occasionally and it's an insane experience. but he was raised with this being perfectly normal. Ever since we mentioned to FMIL that we thought about adopting, not even soon, but in like 3 years time at least, she's been speaking to him about how it's unnatural and sinful, and it means we'll be having a perfectly normal conversation and he'll say, "But what if we're condemning this child to hell? Or wouldn't you rather feel God's light pass out of you when you birth his child, and it's clearly his mother's words coming out his mouth?" I know this maybe crosses into just nozo territory at times, but it's so clearly FMIL's influence on him that keeps pulling him away from sense and reason. She's told me to my face before that I'm being selfish for not wanting to give birth, and that it's the terrible satanic specter of feminism hanging over me convincing me to abandon my womanly duties. And whilst thankfully FH isn't buying into that side of things, I feel like it's a real possibility that her arguments will win out and he'll be put off of adopting when we're actually ready to do so. Can anyone offer any advice from experience dealing with overly religious mills, or even just convincing their so's to stop being convinced that their mother is some kind of authority on everything?